Welcome to the Cincy Postcast. I'm your host, Kevin Wallace, and before we dive into today's episode, I want to tell you about our friends at the Empanadas Box. The Empanadas Box is a small, family-owned restaurant owned by natives of Buenos Aires, Argentina, and they have Argentine-style empanadas with 22 other globally inspired flavors available every single day. Looking for a suggestion? Well, how about the Oktoberfest empanada with bratwurst from LK sausage? It also has cabbage, carrots, onion, and mustard that is only available in the month of September. Their empanadas are available for dine-in and carry-out, but the pro move here is to get a box of frozen ones to take home. You can also find them in your favorite food delivery app. You can check them out online at theempanadasbox.com or check the link down in the description. You can find more information there, including information on their catering options for lunches, parties, and more. And a special offer to listeners of the Postcast, well, they're offering 10% off your order at their Covington, Kentucky location if you mention the Postcast at checkout. They're at 212 West Pike Street in Covington, and I am happy to report that the staff there are incredibly nice and the food is top notch. If you've been listening to the Postcast, you know we've been talking these guys up well before they were a sponsor of the Postcast. So again, special thanks to the Empanadas Box, incredible folks there. And if you go to their Covington, Kentucky location, they'll get you 10% off for mentioning the Postcast. And on this episode of the Postcast, we are talking that Miami win for FC Cincinnati. 1-0, knocked out the team that knocked FC Cincinnati the Open Cup, kicked them right out of MLS Cup playoffs. How about that? Weirdly, this episode went slightly negative. Are there things in this team, in these games that we've seen that make us nervous going into the playoffs? Either way, champagne problems. In part two, it is a international break / MLS news whip around. We sort of riff on coaching firings, the international duty for FC Cincinnati players, covering all of that in part two. You put both of those parts together, well, that's going to be your episode of the Postcast. Joining me to talk about all of that and more are two gentlemen that are also keeping the moratorium on He Who Shall Not Be Named through this episode. I'm joined by Chief. I'm joined by Grayson. Chief, is it against the spirit of our rule if we come up with a nickname for this individual and then just overuse the nickname?
I'm sighing because I do think this is the moment where one of us is going to have to buy a ticket to go see a Dinesh D'Souza right-wing propaganda movie. I don't see the three of us collectively managing to avoid the punishment in this episode.
It is a little later, yeah.
I firmly am of the opinion that using a euphemism, and I will just invoke a Louis C.K. joke.
Yes.
If you know what I'm talking about, you know what I'm talking about. If you don't, but using a euphemism that puts the word in somebody's head,
yes,
is the same. So no, we can't be like, that's not the more. You're violating at least the spirit of the moratorium. If you describe the thing,
right?
Because like the whole point of this was that the amount of coverage surrounding him was insufferable. And we were trying to make it so that there was one place of refuge where you wouldn't hear this man's name or be forced to think about this man. Now, it's a little different in this game because he actually played and there's a relevant reason to discuss him.
Right.
But yeah, no, you can't dance around it. It's kind of like there were all sorts of like religious rules that came about just so that you wouldn't actually there was a prohibited act. Yes. But then the rules existed to prevent you from ever coming close to the prohibited act. And so they built guardrails around it and whatnot. but you're still like thinking about the prohibited act the entire time, because it's like, I don't care that the elevator stops at every floor. Like, you know, it's
Right.
not, it's this, everyone knows the spirit of the rule and you're just looking for a workaround on it. So yeah, no, I don't. Plus, I feel like it would honor him too much for us to come up with a nickname for him or a euphemism. Like if we just called him Susie or something like that, that's not.
I do appreciate the workarounds that, like, the lengths people go to not violate the word of the religious rule, and just like, well, as long as I am in technical, literal compliance, it counts, right?
Right. And this is how you end up with someone jumping on your bed while you're with your girlfriend. So
a book I recommend that where this type of thing is kind of a interesting, like, weaves into the plot in an interesting way, is The Yiddish Policeman's Union by Michael Chabon.
Okay.
It's like an alternative history book. Okay. Where instead of in Israel, the Jewish homeland was established in Sitka, Alaska.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And it's like a noir novel involving a murder mystery in the hypothetical Jewish homeland of Sitka, Alaska.
I love that.
It's a very, very good read.
I do enjoy, too, that Grayson's recommending a book. In the first book recommendation we've had in this podcast in a while, it does include the word union in the title. It's very on brand for Grayson.
Yep. It's also on brand for this weekend. As Minnesota United has a very strange tweet about some non-club employees who were integral to the broadcast decided not to come to work today.
You know,
why did they not come to work? Who could say?
Right. If I were advising, I think I would have avoided the word integral. That feels like it's gonna tip a point to somebody's hand you don't want to.
Yeah, and I've seen a lot of speculation. I think I did like pinpoint what was going on with that. Okay, so for folks who don't know, the Minnesota LA Galaxy this weekend was not aired on Apple. We don't need to spend a ton of time on this, but I think it's just an interesting side story if you want to like look, if folks want to read more about it.
Yeah. The
Minnesota LA Galaxy game was not aired on Apple TV. Instead, it was aired on MLSsoccer.com.
Okay.
And it's because about 7-8 months ago, Minnesota United's production employees elected to form a union.
Okay.
And in that period of time, no contract has been reached.
Never good.
I'm not going to, go into the details on that or speculate about, who's right and who's wrong. It's not super important. But an objective fact, well, it's important to some people, but we're not close enough to the issue, I think, to like dive into that type of stuff. But what happened was those employees picketed the game, and then the employees, the people hired by Apple to do the game production are themselves union employees and refused to cross that picket line.
Dang.
So those were the non-Minnesota United employees. They were like Apple employees or employed by whoever Apple hired to do the game broadcast. And I think that they had and it seemed like they had like a worse quality broadcast because they had to just grab some folks off the street to run the They had like, instead of 6 camera operators, they had 2 non-regular camera operators and then 4 stationary cameras.
Wow.
So maybe they felt like the broadcast was not Apple TV quality.
Wasn't worth it.
I was about to say, because we know that Apple wasn't going to take a huge stand in favor of unions. That wasn't going to happen.
No. Does this make the Galaxy and Minnesota United scabs that the players union crossed the picket line here?
No, they're the players.
The players.
They're union men.
I suppose. Although That's interesting. So I saw the PSRA tweet in solidarity, which is the Professional Soccer Referees Association, the referees union.
Interesting.
Tweeted in solidarity. The MLSPA did not.
Are they somehow separating themselves from the stadium, from the team, which feels
so I did
right.
I did not see anything where these employees were asking anybody, the players or anybody not to play the game.
Yeah.
And I think it would make sense that like these are production employees on strike. Production employees employed by another company, but that are part of the same union, not crossing the picket line seems to make like that's like a pretty close tie.
Yeah.
Would it change things if it was the Philadelphia Union that were at the subject of this game?
They have to be more aggressive just from their name alone.
It's kind of funny though that this was hot in the streets and sports around sports that the Arizona Diamondbacks were staying at a union hotel that was striking, and the team actually issued an apology saying if there was some way we could change our accommodations for an entire traveling MLB roster at the last minute, we absolutely would, but unfortunately we can't. So, I mean, maybe there's an argument to be made that the team players should have refused to play in solidarity with their union brethren.
Or even some sort of act of solidarity, yeah.
I think the MLSPA maybe should have tweeted something, but it's not for me to say. To put a bow on this.
It is for me to say. They should do more.
So to put a bow on this, I did this morning send a Freedom of Information Act request to the National Labor Relations Board for all the documents relating to this union dispute. So we'll see what comes of that.
Off-season content, hooray!
not that a secret ballot would be violated, but can you get the results of their unionization election?
I asked for them.
Okay. Be
so
curious
we'll
to see. Yeah.
I'll get what I get. I'm not going to take them to court over it.
But we should be going for the title of most litigious podcast. That would be
the soccer capital of America, the Kansas City Wizards podcast.
Yeah, they are beating us 1-0. I feel like between the referees and this, we could get 2 in our pocket real quick.
We can make this happen. It's like you need to generate content for the off season. Just get involved in some pesky legal disputes with people.
Well, if certain people keep printing merch with the shield on it, we may at the very least end up an interested party.
We'll file America's briefs with both sides. That way, if we come out on top, no matter what. So we do in fact have a game to talk about in this one. Inter Miami hosted FC Cincinnati.
But how funny would it have been if you would have let off with saying, "Well, we recorded this episode before the game as well," because the games don't matter at this point, folks.
Anyway, this podcast, as you all know, is it's Entering MLS, a modern day labor organizing podcast.
I mean, there's probably a niche for it, and we would certainly corner the market. And if you thought 12 listeners was too many, we could narrow in on all 4 interested people on the lawsuits surrounding U.S. soccer and Major League Soccer, because there's enough there for that to be a full-time beat if we had a well-funded sports newspaper in this country.
Right. Or like segments. Who's suing the U.S. Soccer today?
This is a warning to FC Cincinnati. Not that any of them are listening to it, but if there's like I don't know, if there was like some real, I don't know, I do have a tendency to like latch on to stuff a little bit.
Yeah. You think?
Yeah. So I could see if there was like a real big like blowout like labor dispute involving some MLS team, we would end up making ourselves quite annoying to the league.
Let's just say, get those visas in order, FCC, because we're watching.
I just want to say, like, it's a good thing that, as far as I can tell, most of these fair employment cases that have been filed against various teams have all settled.
Yeah. Okay.
What Grayson really means to say is, workers of the league unite. You have nothing to lose but your chains.
I'll co-sign that. Anyway, we do eventually have a Miami game to talk about. FC Cincinnati wins 1-0, and Chief is 100% right. These games don't matter. We have already achieved our aims for this season. There is nothing to gain here, with the slight exception of this game. If you needed a non-scoreboard reason for FCC to root for this one, FCC was in a position, and then did, to knock Inter Miami out of the playoff race, and therefore probably saving FC Cincinnati the headache that would have been facing them in the first round of the playoffs, beating them 1-0. The Montreal result against Portland, which I think ended 4-1, officially knocked Miami out of the playoffs. I'll go to you, Grayson. Grayson, is this revenge enough for you that Miami is out of the playoffs for the Open Cup specifically here?
So to quote a French novel,
okay,
I guess a translation of it, I don't know.
No, it would have been really funny if you just would have started speaking French and then expected us all to know what you were saying.
Revenge is a dish best served cold, which is from Les Liaisons Dangereuses.
I always thought it was Klingon.
Yeah. So, but speaking of that, I did find a kind of related headline.
Well, if you start speaking Klingon now, this podcast is really going off the rails.
It's related to the French novel. It'll all be clear to, well, it probably won't be clear to anybody, but it may be clear to somebody. It connects in my head. Rather than a genie in a bottle, a petite Argentine's swan song was a bittersweet symphony, and Miami's season was just a bunch of foolish games as their playoff ambitions fell victim to the FC's cruel intentions, the 90s musical.
Wow. Wow, well done. That actually did make sense.
You know, not enough people want to talk about Cruel Intentions as one of the quintessential films of the 1990s.
It's fantastic. I watched it like 2 years ago again. Holds up.
So well done. But it also,
the performances in it are so good. It's shocking. You think I'm joking.
No, it's fantastic. No, it's a fantastic movie. But it was part of an alarming series of films in the 90s, along with Clueless, where incest was a really central theme for a major big budget film.
It'd be like ish-cest, because they're all like step siblings.
Right. But still.
Which did presage kind of a, never mind.
Well, I mean, nobody got stuck, though. So can you really say it's a true step sibling movie?
It's a good call.
I'm not the step sibling. I'm the sibling that stepped up. and helped you out.
It's like, the start of every great idea comes from a single spark, that there was probably one person sitting there watching Cruel Intentions and thinking, when the internet gets invented, I'm registering Pornhub, and we're going to make this happen for everybody.
So it's like weird. So there was like the two Truman Capote movies that came out at the same time that were like, for some reason, in like parallel development. And that happens sometimes. We're like
Armageddon and Deep Impact.
Yeah,
like
two different studios.
Yeah,
it's a little weird that like they developed two like step sibling relationship movies in parallel.
Yeah,
I guess I've been listening to, I watched Sound of Freedom. I know about those Hollywood sickos.
Right,
that's true.
Hopped up on adrenochrome.
They're always ready to go with these. Man, and my go-to
speaking
was
of
going to
Miami,
was going to be Ants and A Bug's Life, but yeah, sure, like this works too. So, oh gosh, so yeah, the games don't matter for the old FC, and yeah, we got revenge. Chief, was this revenge enough for you?
Hell no, no. This is. Did it feel good to win? Yeah,
sure.
But like, with every passing week over the past couple of weeks, it has just been more absurd that seemingly the one game of note that this dipshit played in just specifically screwed us out of a trophy. Like,
right.
Like laser focused on screwing us out of a trophy. And no, because here's the deal too, is that I think they've got like 9 something players going on international duty.
Yes.
Immediately. And their next game is going to be a shit show. They play a game, I think, the day after the international break ends, where they're going to be without, I think, 9 starters. So it's like, so they were going to get got this week or next week. It was pretty much a foregone conclusion. So I don't even know that we can take credit for knocking them out of the playoffs. So no, this isn't revenge, not in the slightest. But it felt good to win. I'll never turn that down. Become one of the only teams in MLS history to win 20 games. That's kind of cool. Yeah. And the game was like it was hard. It was a hard watch because there are some situations in soccer you watch this sport even a little bit, that the game changes when someone scores a goal, especially in like an elimination game in like Champions League or in a cup final. Someone scores and then the entire tenor of the game changes as the other team throws everything forward because they have to have the goal. They have to get the result. That was this game, except it was from kick. Like you can imagine this game was just Miami entered the game down 5-0 and they desperately need to like throw everything forward. They were pushing forward. They were pressing. Everyone was playing high. It was a pressure setup for them. Yeah. And the FC is, just they wanted to win, but don't get hurt. Get your work in. And so it made the first half of this game supremely unwatchable if you were an FC Cincinnati fan.
Yeah, it was, as you said, all Miami early on. And that was pretty much the storyline of this game was Miami throwing everything at it and Cincinnati's defense essentially absorbing the pressure without any real issues.
They got lucky got lucky to not be down 2 or 3 goals in the first half. And so
they got lucky.
Yeah.
So to me, the story of the first half of this game, for whatever it's worth, is that you continue to see problems in 2 areas with FC Cincinnati. And your mileage may vary as to how much stock you want to put in this game. It's kind of like a team's offense in the NFL sucking in the preseason. Does that mean anything? Probably not. But like if the offense sucks in the regular season, everyone's going to point back and say, we had early warning signs of this being a problem back then. So I don't know. So the 2 things I took away from this first half specifically is number one, that Sergio Santos is in an awful run of form right now. Yeah. I don't think he's a bad player per se, but if you were projecting FC Cincinnati forward as to what happens when and if Brandon Vasquez is shipped off this offseason, the answer is not Sergio Santos, at least not the version of Sergio Santos we've seen this year. He's decent as a change of pace striker to come on later in matches and use his speed, but just about everything he did in this game was poor. His touches were poor. His decisions were poor. He had one big chance in the first half that he kind of probably should have done a little better on that left it in a position where the keeper was able to save it. So that was takeaway number one.
If he hit a couple where he should have scored.
Yeah. Yes. Which you start doing like the Brandon Vasquez thing where it's like, okay, so he got in the position. He got to that point and then failed to execute. That was sort of the story on Vasquez for so long.
My issue with Santos is he looked like the like kind of pessimistic rap on him.
Yeah.
That he's like fast and nothing else. Right.
Yeah.
And like, yeah, if you can like get into positions that nobody else can get into, you still have to finish that.
Right.
But like he wasn't adding anything in like the build up or helping them like move the ball around or holding up the ball or like anything, right? Like
right.
if Vasquez is not finishing on goal, there's like 6 other things that he can still do.
Right.
You know?
Right. Which Santos wasn't doing.
Santos wasn't doing anything.
No.
He was losing the ball. He was negative. He was worse than not there in the buildup.
Mm-hmm.
And then in the one thing that you expect him to be better at than anybody else, which is like outrunning defenders, getting into spots, he wasn't finishing easy chances.
Yeah.
No.
Especially
which, like,
on
I agree. Like I don't think he's a bad player. And we've seen him, be very good. He just wasn't last night. And I don't think has been since he came back from injury.
Right. It just sucked too, because he had a particularly rough night just holding on to the ball on a night when Vasquez found Lucho's touch on his feet. Like he was hitting passes I haven't seen Vasquez hit this year, and it looked like a totally different player. And yet every time that he was hitting these great balls to Santos, just didn't go anywhere. It went directly into the keeper. So yeah, frustrating from that point. And Chief, what was your second point? Yeah.
Also, I want to point this out. It wasn't just that. He was also poor passing. Like there were a couple horrendous passes that Santos had where it's just like, I don't even know what you're seeing in the game making some of these plays. My second point of note in the first half is that there is a worrying trend with this team that extends beyond this game, that this team, for whatever reason in the defensive setup they use, there's a stubborn refusal to come out and contest shooters at the top of the 18. There was another example in the first half. I think it was Joseph Martinez that took the shot, where there's an off the ball run happening to the near post that Barreal is covering. And instead of stepping up to contest the shooter, Matt Miazga backs off to also go with the runner. And Martinez has a wide open space in front of him where I think he pings the ball off the post on that one, of the crossbar. And it would be one thing if this was just this game, but this team has got to figure out a way on the back line to offer more on-ball pressure on shooters, because teams, I think, have figured out that if they can get the ball around the top of the 18, that FC Cincinnati will concede space to allow them to shoot. And I get that these are low percentage shots compared to other things you can do, but if you give players, good players like Joseph Martinez, even at his age and his level of washness, like if you give them time and space and a clear look at goal, a lot of these guys are going to put the ball on frame. And it's bitten this team repeatedly this year. And in the playoffs, where it's a lot of these games are going to end up 1-0, 2-1 at most. Mm-hmm. You cannot be conceding. They're just backbreaking goals to concede when you have done all the hard work of defending, but then don't step up to contest the shot.
Yeah, especially in the second half, Pinto and Kubo, especially towards the end of the game, were able to do that with a certain midfielder. That there was a certain panic that we can't let this guy get a shot that existed. Good, contest that. But that doesn't exist for, like you said, Joseph Martinez, who is not a nobody in this league. And in the playoffs, that will be a Thiago Almada, that will be whoever from Orlando.
Cucho Hernandez.
Right. Like these are good players.
But we have been beaten long enough by I'm not going to say bad players,
right?
But by like non-special players in MLS. And, say what you want about the relative quality in MLS. These guys are still all professionals.
Yeah.
If you give them enough time and space, most of them that play in midfield or in the attack can find an open spot and goal from outside of the box.
Yeah.
And you can't, there is an extent of picking your battles. Sure. But if everybody's doing what they're supposed to be doing, somebody should be able to step up and at least pressure. So you don't lose in a playoff game because a Kwadwo Opoku kind of player, beats you from a shot outside the box.
Yeah. And like I said, it's not something where it's like, okay, I understand that it's hard to take anything away from games like this where the games are the result is outright meaningless for FCC. But it was happening before this game. And it was yet another instance where a defender is backing off instead of pressuring the ball. And honestly, it's got to be a coaching thing at this point, because there have been far too many instances where the defense has been passive and aggressively pressuring shooters, being more worried about getting beat from behind. And I get it. You don't want to concede a through ball to someone and set up a tap in, but there's got to be a happy medium between just letting people take rips at Celentano and, completely exposing yourself to a back post run. And the communication has just got to be better, because this was another one where the run was covered. It was covered by Barrial. He had the positioning and he had the leverage on the play, if I remember the replay correctly, to stop this. And Miazga still went with it to double up one person while another person took an uncontested shot.
Yeah, and I don't want to be too negative about a game where we won and knocked the other team out of the playoffs.
Right.
But and this is probably at least a bit a function of us just being the stronger team in games throughout the year. But it feels like we have to work really hard for nearly all of our goals. And we give up a lot of kind of sloppy goals or goals through lapses. You know, and I'm thinking about the kinds of outside shots that Chief is talking about. The Martinez goal from Philadelphia, the Opoku goal, the goal that Orlando scored at TQL Stadium.
All of St. Louis's goals.
Yeah, and going into the playoffs, you can't give your opponent that kind of margin, because I can tell you how every team is going to play us. Right. They're going to play real tight defensively, and then just try to just hope they get lucky on an outside shot or just some weird bounce in the box.
Yeah. Or if Orlando and New York Red Bull have put together a blueprint, it's flop around like dying fish for 75 minutes, and then you'll accidentally get one in at some point.
Frankie's goal.
Yeah. Was another one where it's like we didn't talk about it because we didn't record after that game, but it was another goal where nobody stepped up to pressure Frankie Amaya. He takes a rip and he can make that shot. Most players in MLS can make that shot when it's uncontested. It's like taking a free kick with no wall. And on
the other hand, look at what a lot of our offensive possession ended up in, right? Like Lucho trying to dribble through literally 5 guys that are shoulder to shoulder, or
right.
Callender had a great game, right?
Yeah.
They had a lot of we had a lot of point blank shots that Callender was just able to save. But it's just, it makes me wonder about how a playoff game is going to look when it feels like everything needs to go perfect for us to get a goal. and other teams can just kind of like ping the ball forward and kick it and look dangerous against this.
Yeah, we'll probably talk about this more as we get closer to the playoffs, but I do have a concern with this team. And last night, hey, to them, they won the game. They got lucky they didn't concede 2 or 3 in the first half, like I said. But there is a concern that lingers in terms of this team's ability to win the type of game you need to win in the postseason, where teams are going to play them like Orlando, like Red Bull, and that's that time wasting from jump. We are playing for extra time. We're playing for the 1-goal winner, and that this team's mental lapses that they have from time to time defensively, your odds of pulling what they've done multiple times this year, which is go down a goal in the first half and then come back and get 2 in the second half. I think that they are plus 26 goal differential, this team. I think 27 now.
It must be plus 27 because they were saying plus 26 before we'd scored.
Yeah. So plus 27 in the second half of games. Like, that's insane. Really, really good, but really, really not sustainable in a playoff situation, I don't think.
Well, yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Where I was going to say, we're getting that first goal, especially when we're going to be playing all of our games at home, these teams are going to pack it in up 1-0, especially assuming we get through the first round of the best of 3 series, where I think they will do draws in those. I don't know if anyone.
They skip extra time, go straight to penalties. And I'm pretty sure, at least the way it reads now, because I looked at this today, the way it reads now is a penalty win is a win.
Yes, that is how it's going to be. So yeah, you can win if you win the 2 penalties, you are through to the next round in that first round there. Yeah.
So I think that they should do
the point system.
They should do the point system from Leagues Cup, where a shootout win is 2 and a shootout loss is 1. Because I really, really don't like the scenario of one team wins 2 games in penalties and the other team wins 1 game in regulation.
By 4 goals or something, yeah.
And the team that won 2 penalty games, which would have been 2 total points in the regular season, advances over the team that would have had like 3 regular season points. I don't like that.
So even in that first set of rounds, the incentive for teams, especially on the road, is going to be get this game to penalties.
Yeah.
And FC Cincinnati, they have struggled mightily with teams that play that cynical style. And yeah, like I need to see, this would have been a game to see a little bit more out of, hey, be a little more disciplined, figure out what your defensive disciplines are, be ready for it. But like they've flunked the last couple of tests they've had on playing teams like that. And it's we'll talk about it down the road, I'm sure. I don't want to get too far off this game, but there are definitely some things that even in these meaningless games like this game and the Atlanta game we're going to have in 2 weeks, there are things this team can be showing and working on that will hopefully set them up well for the playoffs. And this game, it was, 2 steps forward, 2 steps backwards. There are the defensive lapses in the first half, but in a game where it was 0-0 for the majority of it, there was the looming specter of old LM getting ready to enter into the match and try to do his Neo from the Matrix routine as soon as he walks in. They went and they got a goal. And they won the game. They got the 1-0 result. And like that's a playoff style win. The game is 0-0. There's some chances. You're not getting a whole lot, but the 1 goal is going to be the winner. And they got the 1 goal that was a winner on kind of the same kind of goal you're going to expect to get in the playoffs, which is, a snapshot from outside and someone crashing the boards for a rebound and a putback. That's a playoff style goal from Alvaro Barreal right there.
And with everything that I said before, I really loved to see getting that exact kind of goal.
Yeah.
Right. Let it rip, crash the goal.
Yeah.
Right. Like that's
we need to see more of it. Yeah.
Right. That needs to be a big part of their game. And then the last negative thing that I want to say is
I've got two, so keep going.
Go ahead. Is if you're so their goal differential on the season is plus 18.
Yeah.
Which means that if you're plus 27 in the second half, you're negative 9 in the first half.
Yeah.
And, during the season, there's a lot that teams are thinking about. Like staying healthy.
Yeah, rotations,
all types of stuff.
Minute managements.
In the playoffs, you go down. The only thing that they're thinking about is not letting you back in the game.
Right.
Yeah.
Like they are going all out. Not worried about, minute management, not worrying about their game Wednesday, not worrying about literally anything else except for you are not going to make this game 1-1.
Yeah.
And they came back last year against Red Bulls. Right?
Yeah.
So I don't think that's it, but they can't. I am a little bit concerned about the team that we've seen the last couple of weeks, which has shown a lot of fight, but not a lot of ability to take control of games early heading into the playoffs.
Yeah.
Now, other teams have played the counterpoint, and I'll shut up after this. The counterpoint to that is that literally every team that we've played in the last couple of months has been playing for more than we've been playing for. And especially in the last couple of weeks, there's been a lot of rotation. But we're looking for 2 weeks. We're looking at 2 weeks off. We're looking at a game against Atlanta where we have nothing to play for, and Atlanta is still, I think, jockeying for
a better seed or something. Yeah.
Yeah. So Atlanta. No, Atlanta can't get in the top 4. So I don't know. I just I believe in momentum. I guess is where I'll leave it. And I wish ours was just a little bit more convincing.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. I mean, this is the Supporter Shield winning team that hasn't been out of first place since May or whatever, and yet still goes into plenty of games without looking like the dominant team, the team that is, crushing the table with, running away with everybody's hopes and dreams. It looks like just another MLS team sometimes. And it's hard to square the two, which is the team that we're seeing on the field at this moment versus the team that on paper exists in the league, almost feel like two different teams. You look at Lucho's leading in goals and assists and is in the Golden Boot race. And they've got, multiple candidates for Defender of the Year awards. And they've got the leader in clean sheets and goal. And yet it doesn't feel that way. And, I do wonder how much of this is just being a stressed out fan of
there's champagne problems for sure.
Right. If you're a Miami fan, were you shitting bricks going into this one? God damn it. We had to scratch and scrape to lose this one. I can't believe we held our own against Cincinnati. I don't know.
To a certain extent also, this team has just been on cruise control since June. Top of the table. They handled their business pretty well in Leagues Cup in the group stages. But for a heroic act from our buddy down in Miami, they would have probably won Open Cup. And every time this team is needed to step up and get something done, they stepped up and got something done. They are a completely different team at home than they are on the road, which is helpful in a lot of these spaces.
Yeah.
So, I'm just curious, and I don't, this isn't a negative take or a positive take. I am just curious what happens when they turn off the autopilot and they take control of the wheel. Do they have that ability to, like you said, where there is no tomorrow? Do they have the ability just to floor it? And I'm just curious what that looks like and what Pat and this team will do, because we really haven't seen them do that. They've had Bopenza on a pitch count for most of the year in most of these games.
But to the good on that point, when Bopenza came in the second half, they looked like a team that was like, we could put together the best attack in the league.
Oh,
I mean, they only got one goal in the second half, but like they were dangerous the entire time, and Miami was not, even after they made adjustments.
The thing
I'll
too,
throw
though,
in there. Oh, sorry, real quick.
The thing. Oh, go ahead, Joe.
I was just going to say, I'll throw in the Red Bull game as well. When Lucho and Barreal both sub in, it's like a light switch went. Those guys were sitting on the bench ready to go. And it was like, I think literally the first play of them being subbed in was like a beautiful counterattack with the both of them. It was like, okay, we still have it, I think.
Yeah. Vasquez's first touch in that Red Bull game was almost a goal. Like, it was just wide of frame. He was on for less than 30 seconds and he almost scored. Same thing with Bopenza in this game. He comes on and it's instant offense. And to a certain extent, a little bit of this was that Miami needed this game. Yeah. They needed to win. And unintentionally, there was almost a rope-a-dope thing going on with this, where Miami expended a ton of effort in the first half, controlling the ball, pressing, running, just an incredible work rate this Miami team had in the first half. That was an unsustainable level, pressing for that first goal. You fast forward to about the 65th minute, the team was out of gas. Like, you could tell that that was a team that was on tired legs, that's playing a lot of games where they have to have the result. And as soon as Bopenza comes in, he's running against guys that are maybe moving 65% speed, and it showed.
Yeah. No, Again, I'm going to pile on here as well, but like, this team did what it needed to do. And if this was a playoff game, which it could have easily have been.
It was for Miami. That was a playoff game for Miami.
But to go on the road and to, be running at 80% for FCC and still come away with the win, and the defense holding up under that barrage. Well done. So I do want to, like, we're going to keep picking at stuff. I'm going to, at least here. But like, this was in general a good game for FCC, I think. So just other things to like get stressed out about going into the playoffs. And Chief, I know you've had takes on this as well, but I just want to bring it up. Barreal getting in on the screaming at Bopenza, and if lips are to be read, dropping F-bombs at Bopenza in this game. He is certainly the new guy in this team. That's now two Argentines on this team that appeared to really not mesh super well with him right away. And as much as I'm willing to say like, oh, it's an emotional thing, and we've certainly seen Miazga scream at everybody on this team, Roman's gotten after guys, I don't feel like I see guys go after Santos as much, or even Baji as much. And maybe I'm just not looking for it. But Chief, what do you make of the body language with Bopenza and his teammates?
I don't know. Like, I want to write it off. Yeah. But it's been there for a while. Your point about them not screaming at Baji or Santos, I mean, maybe that's a reflection of the fact they just don't have the expectations for what they're capable of versus what Bopenza is supposed to be doing. To a certain extent as well, I get the sense that Bopenza may, and I don't know, there is no way of knowing this without being in the training room or hearing what the marching orders are to Bopenza when he, rips the training kit off and gets ready to go in. But you get the sense that Bopenza does seem to freelance a little bit more than a lot of the other guys do. And part of that is just, you're the star and you're afforded certain privileges when you're the star player. So maybe Baji and Santos are more reliably where they're supposed to be within the form of the attack versus Bopenza, who kind of plays that striker's feel of where I need to be at any given moment. I don't know. Yeah. I do get the sense, though, that in games like they had last night, that the team does get frustrated that they're not scoring. And I think there's a human element to this, that they're the best team in the league. They just won the supporter shield. They should be fucking beating Miami. And when that doesn't happen, I think that this team starts to get frustrated with itself more than anything the opposition is doing to them. So there's always a tendency to start to mount the circular firing squad when the only reason you're not winning is you, in your mind. I'm not worried about it, though.
Yeah, what do you make of it?
So I think that Chief kind of hit it there where, like, there were times when Santos would, like, make a bad pass or not be in a place. And yeah, he wasn't yelled at, but, like, you could see frustration in, like, Lucho specifically. And it's almost one of those things where it's just like, yeah, he just sucked there. It's like with some guys, it's like, yeah, he just sucked there. You know, he ran out of talent.
Yeah.
But with Bupenza, I think it's more in the situations where we're seeing where he made a decision.
Yes, the decision making
that they didn't like. It's the decision making. It's not the screwing up that they're reacting to.
Yeah, you can mishit a pass, you can take a bad shot, but it was the fact that you chose to pass or chose to shoot in that moment versus the other. Yeah,
like you see guys yell at guys when they don't make a run, for example.
Right.
But they don't yell at each other so much when they make the run and just boot the ball out of bounds because they make a bad touch.
Yeah,
you know.
You think it's potentially because Bupenza is just so much more noticeable with that shock white hair at the top that it becomes more obvious when he does something wrong? Like he sticks out a little bit more?
Yeah, I mean, like, I wasn't concerned, honestly, when I saw Barreal and Bupenza yell at each other. I don't know. Like, you have to be demonstrative to get your message across. And I think those two guys, add Lucho to that, add even Brandon to that, own the right to freelance a bit.
Yeah.
You know, to try to make something happen. And then if they don't make something happen when they could have passed to a teammate, yeah, the teammate gets to yell at them. But as long as they're not, and I can't think of examples of it like affecting their relationship. And when Barreal scored, Bupenza was there right away
immediately
to celebrate with him.
Yeah.
And they hugged each other. And you know, what I would do is I would throw it back to Baji's comments about Lucho's long run against Charlotte, where he said if Lucho hadn't scored there, I would have been pissed or something along those lines.
Yeah.
Right. But the fact is that, like, Lucho did score there, you know, and because like Lucho gets to kind of call his own shots. And I think Bupenza, even though he hasn't been with the team for a super long time, due to his stature and, you know, throw in the results so far, I think Twellman said he's like third in the league in goals per 90 of players with at least 5 goals.
Twellman also said, though, that he thinks that Berkey is still a serious contender for MVP. So
I don't give a shit about that.
Full of shit.
But that's his opinion. This is a stat.
Okay. Fair enough. Fair enough. Hand up. That's on me. You're correct on this one.
So I would say, you know, due to his stature and the results so far, Bupenza also has earned the right to freelance, and, you know, some of the consequences of freelancing is if it doesn't go well, people react to it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. But as long as they just keep playing, I'm not going to worry about it.
The freelancing thing, the only reason I think that is that there was at least 2 times in this game where Bupenza almost ran into other players. And to that, it's just that so when 2 players run into each other, someone's not doing what they're supposed to do. And I think that, like, we get away with that with a lot of the other players because Acosta, Barreal, and Vasquez have played so much together that they kind of start to develop a sixth sense for where each other are supposed to be. And Bupenza just hasn't been here long enough to really have that Jedi reflex yet.
And Lucho Vasquez and Barreal don't, like, really occupy the same spots. I mean, we did run into the issue with Brenner. Brenner coming back and kind of occupying Lucho spaces. And Albright has said that one of the things he likes about Bupenza is Bupenza, like Brenner, can come back and, you know, play
Can I just offer a suggestion that's sort of like a coda to this conversation?
Yeah,
Please.
I really do think that as fans, and I'm guilty of this, so this is me pointing at me in the mirror right here. You go in there and make it about yourself there, Chief. We really need to just talk less and worry less about pro athletes interacting with their teammates during a game.
Fair enough.
I mean, today I was watching the Who Days play today, big win. And at the end of the game, Joe Burrow is losing his mind on some backup. I'm not a Bengals fan. Some backup running back that fucked up an audible and didn't try to take the ball from him on a handoff, and he had to go eat a sack at the end of the game. And he's like pointing at his head like, fucking think, like just losing his mind at this guy. I guarantee you they're not going to be mad after the game is over tomorrow. It'll be back to business as usual. He'll probably tell him, hey, that was a boneheaded play, and in a bigger situation, you probably could have gotten us killed there. You got to listen. But these guys are all, to a person, type A. They've been told they're the best at what they do since they were probably toddlers in terms of soccer. They're going to get mad at each other every so often on the field. And just you can, unless they start throwing hands at one another, I wouldn't worry too much about body language or what's being said, because just about every time we have these concerns, we find out after the fact that it was all overblown. These guys really like each other behind the scenes, and it's just things got heated in the moment, and they bro hugged in the locker room. They apologized for, yelling at one another, and everything was cool, and everyone was joking at training the next day. Oftentimes, when two teammates have a problem with one another, like, we don't find out about it until somebody writes a book like 20 years later.
That's a good point. Yeah, at least in terms of public beef, there isn't evidence. I'm just over here being very nervous about winning MLS Cup, so I'm trying to find anything and everything that could keep us from there. But no, I think that's a good note for the fan base, and I will do my best to internalize that as well. I'll give you one last one here that I've been slightly concerned about, and I can stretch this over the last 3 games. Roman Celentano has made me nervous in plenty of ways the last 2 times we've seen him out, in ways that I don't think we're used to seeing this year. He has really fumbled, miscommunication, at least in terms of calling guys out and coming out for balls. He's been a little slow on some shot stopping things. He did another one in this game where he caught a ball he deflected a ball that was very clearly going out of bounds and sort of gave Miami a free corner in this one. And overall, the big thing here is that the distribution is still horrible. He is so bad with his feet. It makes a lot of sense why he became a goalkeeper and not literally any other position. But I get super nervous every time the thought is to pass it back to Roman to bail us out of a high press of some kind, because it's gonna fail at some point with the ball at his feet. I don't know if either one of you have felt this way or if this is overblown, but I'm not as confident as I was, say, a month ago as I am right now. And I don't know what that is. I don't know if it's a me thing, if that's a him thing, if that's a pressure isn't on type thing. I don't know.
I think that his distribution really, there were a couple games early in the year where it was like, oh, it looks like he's figured his distribution thing out in the offseason. And that didn't last. He's been, I would say, average to poor with his distribution all season. Mm-hmm. I think his shot stopping has still been pretty good. I would say over the course of the past, couple months. Other than that, just horror 5-hole disaster in Toronto. Yeah. He's been pretty solid with his hands. He had a couple of good saves in this game. He had one early on a snapshot that was really, really good. And yeah, I think he's been good, but like if you were asking, has he taken a step in his second year. I don't know that the Roman Celentano we're seeing right now is markedly different than the Roman Celentano we saw at the end of last year. So your mileage may vary in terms of what you think his developmental trajectory is currently. But to a certain extent, there's also like a ball don't lie situation. He's leading MLS in clean sheets. It's one of the best defenses in MLS.
He's now in second after this weekend. Stephen Fry passed him with Seattle, but otherwise, yeah.
I wasn't second guessing you, Chief. I just didn't know the stat.
Yeah, he was so we'll say among the league leaders in clean sheets. I think that they are second best or best in the East in goals allowed right now. I think only Nashville is better than them, if anyone's better. The communication on the back line for this year has been...
That's right. Nashville is better, but nobody else. The communication on the back line this year has been really good. I think there haven't been as many horrid defensive breakdowns like we've seen. Seattle and Dallas in the West.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I think he's got a lot to hang his hat on. And I think that just, again, it's a champagne problem when what we're talking about is the distribution from your keeper as something that we're concerned about.
Fair.
So, champagne problem, but I think we're a champagne team in the league. And like I'm thinking back like specifically to like the Charlotte game. I was thinking about like watching that game even before we started scoring goals. I was thinking, building up from the back, this team feels as good or better than anybody else in the league. Like I think this is a, front to back fluid ball playing team when they want or need to be. And it does seem like a team that would benefit from a goalie who was good in distribution. However, this is Major League Soccer. You are not going to get Ederson.
Right.
You are not going to have a goalie who is top in the league in distribution and top in the league in shot stopping and defending crosses and all that other stuff. And so I'm very happy with Roman Celentano as a goalkeeping package on this team. And I think it's clear he's no shade, but I think he's the best goalkeeper on the roster. So I mean, there were a couple moments in the game where I was like, where he felt a little out of position, that maybe a better team punishes you, but you also have defenders, and he made a lot of plays in goal. So
I think the big difference for me is that in terms of Roman is that I still think Roman's a very good goalkeeper. Where my opinion of Roman has changed, and maybe I'm off base on this, and someone smarter than me, and it's not hard to find that, but someone smarter than me will have to correct me on this. But I'm much less of the mindset now that Roman is on a locked-on trajectory to Europe, where if you would have asked me this time a year ago, I would have said, I could see Roman being sold in the near-term future, year to 18 months, over to some club in Europe. And I don't think the development has been such that I am looking at Roman and thinking, yep, he's a lock-on to go to Germany or to England or something like that at this point.
Yeah, we haven't seen... I agree with that take.
Yeah.
I actually had the exact same thought. But this is not inconsistent with that thought. We haven't seen Roman's new contract salary number yet, of course. But if Roman didn't get any better, which I obviously, I don't think that's going to happen. But if you have Roman at this level, I'd be pretty happy with that as our long-term MLS goalkeeper.
Same. Absolutely same.
So I don't really view that as I'm not put out with the thought that we might not be able to like sell Roman onto Europe
right
someday.
And it's not a knock on Roman either. Goalkeeping is notoriously a late blooming position. Like goalkeepers that are ready to go to the Premier League from the United States at his age, or it would be not historic, but it would be, wow, that would be a eyeball raiser if a goalkeeper 2-3 years out of playing in Indiana was all of a sudden being sold to the Bundesliga or being sold to the Premier League. It's happened before, but like there's room for development for Roman Celentano. I still think he is going to get better. I think the talent is still there, that even if this remains the baseline performance, like Grayson said, I think he's a great value and he'll have a great career in MLS. I'm not precluding the notion he's going to get better. I'm just saying that, like, I don't know that he is so much a short-term player for FC Cincinnati anymore. I think that you can start to think about Roman Celentano's long-term future here, which, as an FC Cincinnati fan, great, awesome. One less thing you have to worry about as the roster churns elsewhere.
Yeah, and Matt Turner is not like a good comparable to anybody.
No, right? He's Matt Turner. There's no.
Because he was in like a weird situation,
right,
where he was like kind of came later to the sport, so he was not on a typical development path.
Mm-hmm.
But like, I feel like Gazan didn't go to the Premier League until his mid-20s and didn't really like establish himself until a little later.
Right.
Ethan Horvath was in a different kind of path, but like wasn't even really getting like regular starts at like the championship level until like his year, like 25, 26, I think.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I would take Zach Steffen over Roman right now, to be honest, as a shot stopper. So,
yeah,
I think he's in like a really good spot. And like, I'm not writing, I wouldn't write off him playing in Europe.
That's good. I'm glad we're not writing the guy off at age 21.
No. We're 20. Hold on, he's 23. He's 23.
He looks 21 though.
So I'm not saying like he still as a goalkeeper has time.
Yeah.
To go to Europe. But like, if he's our Andre Blake,
right,
that's a pretty good outcome for both sides.
For a draft pick and presumably his salary. Yeah. No, to be clear, I'm not saying Roman's bad or that Roman is washed by any means. I just meant over the last couple of weeks, I have felt less confident in his positioning, in his shot stopping. It's just something about it. And again, could just be my nerves, could just be the team taking the foot off the gas. It just hasn't looked as sharp as it did in the past. Plus, I feel like there has been a very real backslide in the distribution to where it's been, I don't know, 2 not so hot games for me anyway, for Roman back to back.
I think a lot of his bad. I think a lot of his really, really bad passes have been under pressure.
I think this is Kevin. This is Kevin softly advocating for Berkey to win MVP. That like you can't underestimate the importance of a goalkeeper. And if Roman was better, this team would be maybe never have lost a game.
Berkey has given up like 8 more goals this year in the league than Roman has.
Sorry, just Twellman said that during the broadcast, and I almost wanted to throw something at my television. I was so.
This feels like a segment 2 topic, but
in theory, if Roman saved every shot, FCC would be in a better position. So something to think about.
Many people are saying,
yeah. They have to keep narrative. They have to have something to talk about.
Yeah, fair enough. Is there anything else from this game in particular that we wanted to pick at to, I don't know, heap praise on? I don't know where you guys feel about this one. I feel like this game was pretty well picked over, but
fuck them. I'm so glad they're out of the playoff picture now. I do want to talk about this though. Won't someone please think of Apple and its the MLS's corporate overlords? There is probably a tangible amount of money that the league and Apple TV lost by FC Cincinnati winning this game. Like, yeah. The league probably watched this game thinking, those sons of bitches.
That 100%. Another fun one, again, doing my best to skirt around language here. On Twitter, it's impossible to see posts about Ronaldo without, say, his rival being brought up in the Twitter comments underneath there. And I saw a great tweet basically defending the honor of Ronaldo's rival by saying, well, come on, he lost to Cincinnati, like, that's a really good team. You can't hold that one against him. I thought, wow, Cincinnati has made it to where the fanboys are saying, well, that's a justifiable loss. You can't expect a win there.
You know, it's not being talked about often enough, but Ronaldo has never missed the MLS Cup playoffs.
Many people are
neither has
Roman
Celentano.
Damn.
Or Ian Murphy.
Ian Murphy has been to more MLS Cup playoff games than, the GOAT.
Others. Well, good. Let's head on over to part 2. We'll touch on the international break and MLS news. This episode is also brought to you by Cincy Shirts. Look, you know Cincy Shirts. You love Cincy Shirts. They've been with FCC from the beginning, and we here at the Postcast, we're just huge fans of their work. They were very early sponsors of the Postcast here, and we have always enjoyed their work. If you head on over to cincyshirts.com, that's Cincy with a Y, shirts.com, and check out using the promo code ThePostCincy, all one word, all caps, you will get 10% off your order, and you let them know that we sent you. Like, they have MLS and MLSPA licensed FCC gear available online and at their 2 retail locations in Hyde Park and Fort Mitchell. If they don't have your size on the shelf, they can print you one on the spot. That is a fantastic feature and something that I have used as well. So again, special thank you to Cincy Shirts. Head on over to their website or check the link down below in the description for the promo code ThePostCincy for 10% off your next order. And a huge thank you to Cincy Shirts. All right, we're back with part 2. We're going to touch on the international break and some other news around MLS. I think on the international news break, and Grayson, you were always my fact check here, not a whole lot for FC Cincinnati. I have us down as Junior Moreno, Santi Arias, and Yerson Mosquera are off to represent their countries, that is Colombia and Venezuela, across those 3. We did see, we found this out before we recorded, Gabon is playing a friendly, but there hasn't been a single squad announced. Is there anything else that we should be keeping an eye out there?
I don't think so. I mean, okay. Gabon's federation hasn't tweeted since like mid-September. So I don't know what's going on with that. I mean, they have nothing to play for, right?
Right.
So I don't think there'd be a lot of pressure for like Bupenza, Bawanga, Aubameyang to like go to whatever game they have.
Yeah.
And then the other person that I always look out for is Angulo, because he's kind of been on the periphery of Ecuador, but he was not called in.
Yeah. Makes sense.
I'm not worried about any of this stuff, really. I'm worried about, number one, is health. Mm-hmm. What you don't want is someone picking up an injury when going through international duty and it severely impacting their availability for the cup playoffs and the cup run.
Yeah.
But the good news is it seems like most of the players that have been called up are unlikely to get significant minutes.
Yeah.
What the international teams are being called up for. That's number one. Number
but
two.
It's cool that,
it's awesome. No, I love it.
Mascara and Arias got called back up for Colombia.
Yeah.
Moreno's been like a mainstay for Venezuela for years. But like for Mascara to earn his first cap with
as an
Colombia,
FC Cincinnati player.
Not cap. He hasn't appeared. But his first call-ups, multiple call-ups now as an FC Cincinnati player. And
That's
Santiago
cool.
Arias to play his way back into the Colombia picture with his play with FC Cincinnati.
It's fucking cool. It
says a lot about the stature of like MLS, but like it says way more about where FC Cincinnati has come as an organization.
Wouldn't you love to be a fly on the wall or just have a candid conversation with someone at Wolves and just say, so, how do you think the loan went for Yerson? Because I can't imagine they're anything but like incredibly thrilled at like the development of this player. And I heard from someone who heard from someone who heard from someone, one of those things. Someone slid into the DMs and seemed to indicate that part of the reason why Mascara got sent here and why his loan was extended or why they didn't have a problem with a full season extension was that the idea was that Yerson needed to come somewhere and grow up a little bit. And that he had all-world talent, but that the maturity level just wasn't there to where it needed to be for him to harness that in the Premier League. And I have to think they're thrilled about how this has gone for him and the player he's blossomed into here in MLS, where he is up for, they put the season-ending awards out, nominations out. He's up for, I think, Young Player of the Year and Newcomer of the Year. He's up for...
Yes. But that was a weird thing that was announced because it was just every team gets to put forward their own candidates.
Yeah,
these are not like finalists.
Look, so People's Choice Awards are still awards, okay?
So for example, Adrian Heath and Wayne Rooney are still Coach of the Year nominees, and they both became out of a job in the last week.
They're Coach of the Year nominees. They coached this year. Come on.
Honestly, the writers should elect Rooney as Coach of the Year, and it'd just be fucking hilarious. And they'd have to completely rewrite all the rules.
The only other thing, to go back to international duty though for a second, the only other thing I am worried about, and this is not a to get real moment on the postcast, as we don't do the to get real moment. If you haven't been following the real news, there is a massive conflict occurring currently over in the Middle East. And whenever there are international flashpoints like this, you always start to get a little bit worried about things that might happen in places that would make it much more difficult for international travel to occur. Or major incidents that make air travel more difficult for whatever reason. So yeah, just I always get a little, if you put my brain into a pie chart, this is occupying the smallest piece of the pie, but it's still a non-insignificant worry that I don't like when our players are traveling overseas during hot flashpoints culturally and geopolitically.
Well, none of them are traveling to a hot spot.
That's true.
Or near a hot spot. Right. And if some, like, worst case scenario, if some folks aren't back by the 21st for whatever reason, I don't really care.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, we're not looking at a playoff game until the 28th at the earliest.
And if something keeps them out to the 28th, then we have much bigger problems globally.
Again, yeah.
Than our first home playoff game. Like, we may be buying iodine in bulk amounts in that case.
The commander bit the wrong person.
Right.
It's like the wrong time.
All of us suddenly realizing at the same time, man, those products that they advertise on the Alex Jones show would come in real handy right about now.
I wish I had my food insurance. Yeah.
That's your doomsday preppers. I shouldn't have laughed at that. Those people weren't crazy.
Actually, Kevin, in that scenario, any insurance you bought would have been a waste of money.
I know.
There's not going to be insurance.
That's what always kills me. It's like, oh, there's a global famine and all the crops have died. Thank God you bought your food insurance that they'll feed you with.
Or the same thing. It's like
food.
It's like, right, like, Iran got into a nuclear war with like 5 other different countries right now. It's like, thank God I own gold. I can surely use this shiny bar to purchase things that I need.
I guess you can melt that down into some kind of like mallet or like some kind of blunt weapon.
Yeah. Can you
tool?
Right. If I make this into a 9mm casing, can I shoot it at someone for food?
I'm going to smash this into a plow. Don't worry, we're going to start farming.
I mean, this worked in GoldenEye.
It would be really funny if like you were like the one guy who was like, you had all the food, and then you were just like, yeah, I just really like gold.
I collect it. I have a whole collection.
but in that case, like, it's as likely that somebody wants gold as like magic cards.
Right. Actually, you're probably more likely to get further with magic cards or Pokemon cards.
Yeah, like in the apocalypse,
like, here's a Game Boy. I got Mew on this.
As long as you've got the batteries, that's entertainment when like everything else is done. It's not connected to the grid at all. The Game Boy might be the most valuable thing you can own in this situation.
I think of all the things to stockpile, double and AAA batteries might be the most valuable commodity to just have a box of. I like that. I will throw out there real quick on
We're not talking about the apocalypse anymore because I got like lots of takes on people that own bug out bags. Like I got really deep into like the doomsday prepper shit. Yeah. Not that like personally prepping for the apocalypse, but just like there was this show. Well, it was this show back in the day. It was called Doomsday Preppers. I had a lot of free time on my hands. I was watching this, and I would just, one Google search leads to another, and then all of a sudden, I'm finding out exactly how long an MRE stays good in the basement, or exactly like.
Have you seen How To with John Wilson?
Oh,
I have
not. There's an episode where they visit some people who like buy super old MREs and like taste them. It's wild. And then the guy talks about like all the crazy crap that he's eaten. Like, I guess they do it for YouTube or something.
I don't know if it's the same guy, but there's a great YouTuber called Ashens that does that. He would find like ancient prepackaged meals and army rations and stuff, but then would also buy like, like dollar store knockoff like PlayStations, and would see like how like the shitty controllers would work and things like that. Very funny.
If it's on YouTube, I'm just culturally unaware of it, as we learned this week.
We learned that.
Well, maybe we'll have the opportunity to educate ourselves in the coming future.
The only thing I was going to mention is Bupenza and Gabon. There is a friendly, and it's one friendly against Guinea. I only bring it up because.
Okay, what you just missed was another Grayson gem that got cut from the podcast.
Anyway, they have World Cup qualifiers in November. It might be worthwhile to them to call up the regular team just to keep in touch with everybody. I don't know. That'd be the only thing I'd consider, is they have important games after this. Maybe they want to bring these guys in. Maybe they do a domestic league thing. I don't know.
Wait, when do they have World Cup qualifiers?
They have World Cup qualifiers in November. They'll have 2 qualifier games. So
in the middle of the MLS Cup playoffs?
Yes. Now you're making me feel paranoid. Now I gotta look this up. If you would like the actual answer, November 13th, November 20th, Gabon plays Kenya. November 13th, they play Burundi. November 20th, that is match day 1 and match day 2 of 10 for World Cup qualifiers for the nation of Gabon.
Are we gonna have to lose people for the playoffs?
I think that there will be a gap. I think there'll be a 10-day gap in the MLS Cup playoffs.
Is that World Cup qualifiers everywhere or just in Africa? Because I feel like Africa definitely has the most inconvenient match day schedules. when it comes to like, I know like the African Cup of Nations always fucks up teams in the Premier League because they don't adhere to the normal windows.
So there is a gap in the
this
playoff
November
schedule.
window is a standard FIFA one. That's when we played Mexico in Cincinnati. That was a November game.
Yeah, right? So round 1 ends November 12th, and the conference semifinals and conference final window is November 25th to December 3rd.
Look at us all learning about the playoffs together.
But November 12th, they play in Gabon November 13th.
We'll just win the first 2 games and not worry about it.
Oh, that's a good point, but my God.
If there was ever a time for Carl to get the private jet out, it's like, you're going to make this game, but just barely.
Yeah.
You can do the second. You can do it November 11th, 10th. I don't care.
Ask them to move it for our guy. So yeah, something for future us to stress about and worry about.
By the way, the disciplinary guidelines for the playoffs are still not available.
Cool. Good.
Just making this up as we go along.
That's why this is the most important tournament. You don't know the rules or the format until the day before it happens.
So basically,
it's the most important trophy in the league.
It's like a taping of Whose Line Is It Anyway?
Oh, jeez.
Or like the Pennsylvania presidential election. Am I right?
Got him.
Got him.
Around the league, though, a lot of firings. We've touched on a few of these. Wayne Rooney out by mutual consent.
So it was a mutual option.
Okay.
So non-mutual consent to him returning.
Okay. So
it was kind of like when I applied to Harvard in college. We just had a difference of opinion as to whether or not I should attend.
Right. You had a mutual option.
You were eligible.
Yeah.
Just like Wayne Rooney still is for Coach of the Year.
Just, like we just didn't see eye to eye on my application status.
You were willing. It was just,
still willing. Give me a call back. I'll go to Boston.
This is the weird thing for DC. They fired their general manager almost exactly a year ago by the time you were listening to this to now. And they have not hired a replacement. And the word was in DC was that Wayne was not being told either way how DC was feeling about keeping him back on, because they told him they wanted a general manager in place in order to exercise his option or make a decision for him, which contributed to him leaving. In fact, he stopped showing up to practices in the week, at least the week leading up to this. Grayson, I just got a quick question for you. How would the league treat Jeff Birding if he fired Chris Albright and was the acting GM for a year and let Pat Noonan go at the end of his contract?
I have an idea. I don't want to find out. But wouldn't it be crazy if there was imagine if there was media that covered this league?
Man, I'd have a field day with this
Imagine
story.
that one of the most successful franchises in the history of the league just went a year without a sporting director. Could you imagine what would happen if there was a journalist that followed that league or followed that team
specifically
and
from
just
a national outlet,
asked about that occasionally and what was going on? So there was a very funny kind of tidbit is the Athletic, which is a for those who don't know, it's
a media outlet that doesn't cover MLS.
It's a startup. It's a web startup that exists for the purposes of hiring and then firing local beat reporters to just replace local beat sports journalism.
Your grandparents may know it as the New York Times sports page.
Oh, that's true.
I
guess it is the New York Times sports vertical.
Right. R.I.P.
Not page. Not page, because
they got rid of the page.
They're not in the page, but they're in the vertical.
Don't you dare publish those web blogs on our paper.
They did a rundown of the coaching vacancies in MLS, and they were expecting DC to become vacant, which it did. and they mentioned that DC had asked Orlando for permission to interview like their technical director or somebody for their open sporting director job. And they said there was like no other news, which I thought was interesting because like last December, The Athletic reported that DC had reached out to FC Cincinnati to talk to Chris Albright, and we're told no.
Man.
And that story seems to have, and that has never been, as far as I can tell, that has never been repeated again by any journalists at The Athletic. And
After
I found
Albright's,
I just found that interesting because it's like, it does feel like the kind of thing that you would mention if you were reporting on DC's sporting director search, like of like the things that they at least had done, which tells me that maybe they were told don't say that again.
After Albright's first year, I mean, it makes somebody look bad, and it's not clear who gains anything by lying about that other than maybe DC, and then Cincinnati or even Albright himself had to reach back out and be like, that literally never happened.
I think the problem with the DC job is that if you get it and you take that job there in DC, at any time you can have your position vacated by Matt Gaetz standing up and demanding it.
I think a problem with that job is like, I understand why you'd want to fill your sporting director job before filling the head coach job.
Sure.
But one, your head coach is Wayne Rooney.
It feels like that just gets understated through all of this.
It feels like you could have hired somebody who said like, yeah, I can work with Wayne Rooney.
Or who does Wayne want to work with?
Right.
There's a couple of guys.
Exactly that. But also like, it's not like they found out yesterday they had to hire a sporting director.
Right.
They fired Lucy Rushton like basically the same month that FC Cincinnati fired Jaap Stam.
Jeez.
And what have they been doing? They hired Sportsology, and Sportsology was just busy telling U.S. Soccer to rehire Greg Berhalter.
We scoured the whole globe.
What if Jeff Birding applied for this job?
That'd be funny.
That'd be really funny.
But I'll
former
say this,
MLS GM.
But again, like, you had another like fawning article about Chicago this past week.
How do they keep doing it?
They have another coaching vacancy, and they just said they're bringing back the same people to run the team that been running it the last like 3-4 years.
How do you do that?
And like, obviously, Jeff Birding was never going to be like a top sporting director in Major League Soccer.
No.
But like, the soccer journalists in the US had so much fun just like stomping all over him for like a year.
Yeah.
You know, you had like the Jeff Carlisle article, you had the allocation disorder guys talking about him. And you know, one of the things people were saying about him was that he's like a nightmare to work for, and nobody wanted to work for him, and he's still involved in soccer decisions and all that other bullshit. And like, yeah, I guess nobody wanted to work for him except for the guy who in a year put together a fucking Supporters Shield roster.
And a coach who's probably going to win Coach of the Year. Yeah.
And like, yeah, people have said nice things about us this year, but not like in a corresponding way to how negative they were about the team in like October, November 2021.
Right. And not only that too, like now that Chris Albright and Pat Noonan have done this, I want to know why there isn't a bigger fire being lit under the asses of some of these teams in MLS that, look, Cincinnati was a dumpster fire, and they hired 2 people, and in the span of 2 years, they have won Supporters' Shield. The same thing with New England. New England was an absolute dumpster fire. They hired Bruce Arena, and within a year and a half, they're winning Supporters' Shield.
I think Bruce Arena might work for us now. I'm not sure.
I mean, I saw a BA in the training staff on the Supporters' Shield clinching night. I don't know if that was a message being sent to the league. Fucking bravo!
Right,
was absolutely great.
I think Kenny might have just grabbed the wrong top, because there's some other BA that works for FC Cincinnati.
Well, he grabbed that same topic in Miami, so the message. Yes.
They just they ran out of K's, the stencils in the pro shop. He was just throw anything on there; it'll be fine. I don't worry about it. But no, like, it's part of the problem with how this league is covered is that there is absurdly low expectations put on teams.
Yes,
like absurdly low. And now you have 2 times in the past couple years examples of how quickly you can get not just better, but to the top of the league if the right people are in place making your soccer decisions. Yet we still get fawning articles over poorly run franchises, and teams bring back coaching staffs that have underachieved chronically, and no one lights them up for saying, you know what? This is nonsense, because we have tangible, definitive proof of what teams can accomplish with ambition. And I don't think there's any other sport in this country that's covered in such a way, other than like college football, where mediocrity is just accepted for certain teams because everything is so set up against your success in the first place. But at some point, for this sport to take the next step in this country, people that cover it have to start putting expectations on the participants.
And every team that's not top 7 in a conference, and top 7 is even frankly generous, unless their coach and sporting director are first year coaches and sporting directors, they need to be asked, like, why does this person still have a job?
Yeah.
Because FC Cincinnati fired their last place sporting director and coach and made the playoffs the first year and won the Supporters' Shield second year.
I don't think that we get enough credit for that either. And it's
why aren't you doing that?
Yeah, like, I don't understand why we aren't lauded. Legitimately, this isn't me just being like taking the contrary point of view because it's funny. But I don't understand why Birding and Linder specifically aren't lauded for the fact that this team came into MLS in 2019. It sucked. It didn't work. They hired someone. The results weren't there. And 2 years later, you had 1 year that was a COVID year where everybody kind of agreed, this is weird. It would be unfair to judge anyone based on the results of just this 1 year. So the next full regular year they got was terrible. And everybody lost their jobs and we were on to somebody else. Like, more teams should behave that way.
Yes.
More teams should. This isn't working. We can see it's not working. Thank you for your service. We'll find someone else and make this work. Like, why isn't that the norm everywhere in this league?
Exactly.
And it's not like they hired Bruce Arena or Bob Bradley.
Right.
They
took a chance.
They hired people who had never had the top job in their specific positions. Albright had never been a sporting director. Pat Noonan had never been a head coach, right?
Right.
This wasn't Toronto bringing in Bob Bradley. And the absolute failure of Toronto bringing in Bob Bradley and giving him both the sporting director and the head coach job and missing the playoffs both years, cratering into, I think, a wooden spoon this year.
Yeah, they won it. Yep.
What are the odds that you hire 2 first-timers for these jobs and you immediately have meteoric success? And nobody gives a shit. People are still talking about candidates other than Pat Noonan for Coach of the Year.
Right.
And nobody talked about it for Coach of the Year last year.
It's absurd. And
they don't want to give people they don't want to give us credit. They don't want to give us credit. And this isn't like a conspiracy theory. This isn't a hot take. They don't get the credit they deserve for A, the success they're having now, and B, for refusing to tolerate failure. This club refuses to tolerate failure. You can say whatever the fuck you want about Jeff Birding and Carl Linder, and God knows it's been written out there, and a Google search history will tell it to you. But the one thing that they were right about, and that they have always been consistent about, is that we're not going to tolerate losing. We're not going to tolerate failure. And they back that up by firing people that aren't successful.
And you know what? You could argue that firing Ron Jans is directly responsible for this team finishing last the next 2 years. Because, as a coach, he had kind of stabilized the team a bit. And they would not have been so woeful defensively with him as coach. They would have played more pragmatically with him as coach. But you know what? They made a decision that they had to make, in my opinion, that other teams with designated players have not been willing to make.
Yep.
And they get no credit for that. In fact, they just get shit on more.
Right. And that was, reading between the lines in that presser, that was an ownership decision. That wasn't Nykamp's decision. Nykamp did not want to fire his guy.
He looked like a hostage in that press conference.
And somehow that becomes a example of ownership mismanagement. When you hire a long-standing, pretty successful, pretty well-respected coach, this is not one of the reasonably foreseeable ways that this goes wrong.
Right.
But it just gets thrown in as they can't hire anybody.
Right. It's well, they fired the people that made those decisions. And Chief, I think your
Stom
point is
was
perfect.
Bad. Stom was bad in a way that you could look back at his background and say he was, you could have foreseen this.
Yeah. The star player in his day. So you see why they take the chance. And I completely agree that the ownership doesn't get the credit, especially when you look at Cincinnati did this, but this has actually been possible in MLS. Sure, Miami probably fudged some numbers here and there, but they completely overmade their roster in one window. St. Louis went from non-existing to a 2-team to now, and if it wasn't for Cincinnati, would have won the Supporters Shield, or at least
no, they wouldn't have.
They would have pushed Orlando at least. It would have been a neck and neck race.
They are 4 behind Orlando and only 1 ahead of Philadelphia.
It would have been a neck and neck race for that.
Would have been tighter for sure.
And we've seen in Houston was hot garbage, did go higher, and MLS, proven veteran in Ben Olsen, and turned them into a potentially home playoff hosting team and an Open Cup winning team. And sure, they've made a couple of changes with their roster, but nothing groundbreaking there. The fact that Chicago's getting praise heaped on them, the fact that Sporting Kansas City is allowed to just have Peter Vermees just continue to live in mediocrity. It's
not
insane.
Even the fact that Chicago's getting praise. The fact that
there's no pressure.
That there's no pressure from the media for them to totally clean house.
Right.
LA Galaxy, they should not just be not praised.
Yes.
They should be people should be demanding explanations for why anybody in that team has a job. Same with LA Galaxy.
Yeah. I would genuinely.
Why did Greg Vanney get the sporting director and coach job at Galaxy? That was never mind.
Like, if you are truly like MLS, we need this league to succeed, so we need to vote for like what's best for the league, and you're very defensive and insular there. Like, I think the question should be, should the Galaxy and Fire continue as franchises? Like, I'd be considering folding them, letting those markets sit dormant for 5 years, and reviving them with a new franchise. Like, they are horrible.
But the thing is
no pressure.
They're horrible. There's a proven story that says that they could be turned around in under a year and a half.
Yeah.
But there has to be a demand, and you have to be willing to go out and spend the right money to acquire the right people, do a good job identifying who those people are. Because there's not just one Pat Noonan. There's probably 2 or 3 Pat Noonans in the coaching tree.
There's certainly other Ben Olsens.
Yeah. There's 2 or 3 of them on our fucking coaching staff right now that I am terrified of losing.
Imagine if Jeff Burning had signed a player and then said, "Yeah, I went on transfer. I watched the World Cup and then I went on transfer market." would we ever hear the end of that?
No.
Yeah, that was literally.
And yet some teams do that.
Toronto,
and it's.
There are a lot of people in this league.
Again.
There are a lot of people in this league that desperately need this league to remain under the radar, or need this league to remain in a state where the media, the national media around this league, has a slight fear of what happens when you scratch too far below the surface and your access gets cut off. They need that to continue because mediocrity is still tolerated in this league, and I am thrilled that I support and that I get to talk about a team that doesn't tolerate mediocrity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If the Detroit Lions had won like 2-3 games a year for a decade.
Yeah.
And then went like 14-2.
Right.
I feel like every team in the NFL, like especially like let's say like they just revamped leadership. It went 14-2.
Yeah.
Every team in the NFL would be asked, like, why didn't you do that?
Yeah.
And every team in MLS should be asked, why has FC Cincinnati in such a short window experienced so much success? And you just haven't.
So, you say that about the NFL as we're taping this. San Francisco is about to beat Dallas 42-10, and Brock Purdy 17-24 with 4 touchdowns. More people need to ask Kyle Shanahan or ask themselves, why is Kyle Shanahan is literally every quarterback that plays for him good? Why can't that happen elsewhere?
Like, I think it's a good question.
They took the last pick in the draft. And he is dominating this league because of good coaching. Just like Jimmy Garoppolo, who's a bum, is a known bum, had them in an NFC championship game. Yet we still tolerate teams in this league where they're like, oh, we need to tank. We need to tank and get our quarterback. It's like bullshit.
I mean, the Bengals should be asked. The Bengals should be asked why they're content letting Zach Taylor be in charge of the level of offensive talent that they have.
Yeah, it's because the Bengals did the thing that, again, I think more MLS teams probably need to do, which is funny because I think it's stupid that the NFL does this. But like the second one team in the NFL is successful, it's everybody goes and hires every assistant that ever worked for that head coach and worked in that front office and scouted a player that played on that team. They instantly become all of the next generation of head coaches and general managers all over the league. Like, oh, you worked on McVay's coaching staff? What were you? Oh, a ball boy? Great. Like, you're now the defensive coordinator here. Like, that's great. Like, I'm so glad you were near that really successful coach 5 years ago.
It's going to be our luck that we are going to be the team that brings this to MLS and our entire, like, everyone's getting poached in the offseason, which that would make me happy for Kenny and it would make me happy for Dom, but God damn it, no.
I'll be really upset if Kenny Arena gets another job before we have him back on the podcast.
That's the challenge. We better move quick because that off season's coming up for these teams.
Yeah. I mean, same. We haven't had him, but like Dominic Kinnear,
Yeah,
I want him around. Like,
yeah.
It's absurd he hasn't been hired as a head coach somewhere again.
Yeah.
Like
he's still top 5 in MLS in wins.
Like, you want to talk about a guy, like, when it's like, okay, you want to level your franchise up from mediocrity? Like, Toronto should be on the phone with, like, DC. They should all be on the phone with Dominic Kinnear. Go get someone to fix your fucking problems.
Well, Toronto hired John Herdman.
No.
Yeah.
Well,
So we'll see how that goes because, they did so great in the World Cup with Canada.
Maple Leaf morons.
I don't think has he ever coached a club team?
I think, wasn't like the Canadian men's team the first men's team he ever coached?
I know he coached the women's team.
I thought he was a women's college coach before that. I don't know his exact history, though.
He was a New Zealand women's coach, the Canadian women's coach, the Canadian men's coach, and now he coaches Toronto FC. They're going to they're not going to be good. They're going to be annoying as hell. They're going to be like Red Bull next year.
Cool.
They're just going to spike your ankles and flop around.
That's
how
more
the Canada men's
MLS
team plays.
Like the whole value proposition of like the single entity was that like you could make it an entertaining product, like as an entertainment vessel. And like, if I'm MLS, I'm telling Red Bull, I'm telling Orlando, I'm telling Toronto preemptively, knock this shit off. You do not get to play this way. We will fine you. We will suspend you. You cannot play this horrible anti-football nonsense.
It needs to stop.
Yeah.
But whatever.
Right.
Anyway, we called this segment 2. And in my mind and in my heart of hearts, I thought we'd do a segment 3. But boys, I don't know. I don't think I have it in me.
Well, just so that in the interest of keeping it in the chamber, keeping it from, you hate leaving good ones on the field.
Yes, please.
In the 11 would have been breakfast this week because Skyline's are introducing breakfast. I had it on Fountain Square and it's delicious. Out of my 18 are catchphrases because I am sad to report, if you weren't there at TQL Stadium, you can go back and watch it on Apple TV. I am sad to report that the post-game comments from the aforementioned Jeff Birding did not include the catchphrase, "Come back, we got more winning to do."
I had the tweet from the Post ready to go if he said it, and that was the saddest deleting I've ever had to do. I was way in.
I want them to go back and retroactively add it to the ceremony. Like, cut to a wide angle so you don't see him talking, and then just add that back in, reverberating around TQL.
I'm glad Grayson brought up Kenny's jacket there with the BA initials. That was going to be in my 11. I like the solidarity there, given how weird it was for Bruce to end in New England. We're still not entirely clear what happened there. So, Grayson, did you want to rapid fire your 11 or 18?
I didn't have any.
There we go.
Spirit.
Save that content for the off season.
Oh, well, Chief, I think with that, we can say adieu to this episode.
Yeah. Fuck Columbus.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Cincy Postcast, which is a production of The Post Cincy. You can check us out at thepostcincy.com for all of our written content, as well as links to our social media. You can follow us on Twitter, and as well, you can join us on our Discord server. You can find links to that server both in this episode description as well as on our website. That is where most of our conversations are going on. We have a lovely community there talking about FC Cincinnati, MLS, anything and everything else and everything in between. We also want to give a huge thanks to Jim Trace and the Makers for providing all of the music you've heard throughout this episode. They're an amazing local Cincinnati band. Again, more information about them is in the description of this episode. And if you enjoyed what you listened to, and you've made it to the end, so I'm going to assume you liked it, or you just can't reach your stop button, please like us, review us, subscribe to us wherever you are getting your podcasts. That is going to be really, really helpful. But more importantly, share this with a friend. A personal recommendation helps spread a podcast so much further. So please share this if you know somebody in your life who's an FC Cincinnati fan, an MLS fan, somebody that you think would enjoy this. Pass it on over. Thank you so much again for listening. It blows me away that people continue to listen to us, and thank you so much again.